So Nothing recently announced the budget version of their budget phone. At least that's what I would call the new Nothing Phone 4B. And if you have for some reason not heard of this phone brand, Nothing, it's in my opinion one of the best phone brands right now because unlike the big companies like Apple or Samsung, they actually changed the design of their phone, each phone. Some good, some okay. But as for this phone's design, I actually like it. It might not be for everyone, like my sister, but I think it's actually pretty interesting. Like, I feel like it's a hybrid between the Nothing Phone 4A and 4A Pro, with it having the glyph bar of the 4A and the clear camera bar of the 4A Pro. But my big question, and probably your question too, is what does the B actually stand for? Because so far, Nothing's naming scheme has been either a number like 3 or a letter like A. Well, Nothing's co-founder, Mr. Akis Evangelidis, I hope I'm saying that right, shared on X/Twitter this long post saying things like, what does B stand for? Nothing. And that it's simply a continuation of their naming system that numbers represent generations while letters indicate different product segments. And it just keeps on going on, but to summarize, what B seems to stand for is that it's a product under the A series. But I was thinking B maybe stands for budget, so A is affordable and B is budget, but now that I'm thinking about that, they're synonyms, but maybe there's a reason for that. Because each year, Nothing's A phones have always blown me away, and this phone is also like that, because it's a budget phone giving mid range vibes. But since this is a budget phone, it does have to compromise on some things. Like, once I show you this, you won't be able to unsee it, so you've been warned. But the bezels on this phone, especially the bottom bezel, is pretty thick, so it has a pretty big chin or beard down there. And if you've watched some of my older videos, then you know what it means, so comment below if you know. As for some things that are pretty big for most people when they're buying a new phone, let's talk about the cameras. So there's a 50 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 16 megapixel selfie, which are some pretty good camera specs. And if you do trust Nothing, which I don't 100% because of what happened last year, or was that this year? Time goes so fast. Oh, back to the photos. So these are some example photos that Nothing says that they took on this phone, but I'm gonna take it with some salt. Under the hood of this phone really shows how it's a budget phone since it has a previous generation Snapdragon 6 Gen 4 chip with 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB or 256 GB of storage, which are some okay specs, which makes sense because this is made for the average person. Maybe that's what the B stands for. Broad. And to focus on the 8 GB of RAM, that's the reason why Nothing's budget brand, CMF, didn't come out with a new phone this year because RAM prices were so high, which makes me surprised that Nothing would actually come out with this phone, which is cheaper than many of the other phones in its lineup. Like, if this chart is true, then the RAM in some budget phones is actually basically half of the price. But one thing that isn't the same for the broad audience that we were talking about earlier is the battery capacity. Because if you buy this phone in India, then you get a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, which can apparently last 1 hour longer than the Nothing Phone 4A. But if you buy it in any other market, then you get a 5,200 milliamp hour battery. Why? Is there like laws or something? Maybe? I don't know. Also, that battery is a vapor chamber, so it should cool down the phone, but the weird and kind of fun thing is that the marketing for this phone is you're hot, so is your phone. So does that mean that the vapor chamber doesn't work? Or is that marketing speaking? I think it's marketing. So even with all those pretty good specs, this phone is still a budget brand, like I think it is in the name, because it starts at 329 euros or 299 pounds, which is about $316, but why it's around is because this phone is sadly not coming to the US, which is sad again because the 4A didn't also come to the US. Like, is the US not a budget phone market? Okay, so with that price mentioned, let's put this in the rankings of Nothing phones from highest price to lowest price. So it starts off with the Phone 3, Phone 4A Pro, Phone 3A Pro, Phone 4A, Phone 3A, then again 3A, now the 4B, and lastly, the Phone 3A Lite, which I'm glad they got rid of that marketing. Lite. And unlike many of those new phones, this phone doesn't come in that new nothing pink scheme that they're coming out with, because it comes in black, white, and my favorite, this poppy and nice and vibrant blue. There's also this red version of the phone that's made for their partnership with RCD, which is an Indian cricket team, if Google's AI overview is right. Now, even though it's a budget phone, I would actually recommend this phone to most people because they don't need their $1,000 iPhone Pros with what they use their phone for. Like, this phone is good for most people with what they do. Now, I've never used a nothing phone in real life, or even the phone that we just talked about, so take everything I say with some salt. But I would still say, with the things I could see online, this is a pretty good phone for most people. Like, it might have a plastic build and might compromise on some things, but it's good for most people. Like, the analogy that I would use for this phone is that it's something like Walmart's Great Value or Target's Up and Up, or basically any grocery store's own brand, because they have okay products that are mostly good for most people, but some people will still go for those name brands that give them that premium feel or something that the budget brands don't, even though the brand of the grocery store might actually be good enough for them. I do understand that that analogy does have other components in it, but you get the meaning. At least I hope. So with all of that said, I'm gonna give the Nothing Phone 4B an exclamation point because it's just so refreshing and nice to see that Nothing is pushing the norms of normal phones with coming out with a new design every year, having a fun OS and a fun design. Like, it makes fun phones fun and different again. So thanks so much for watching this video, and if you did enjoy this video, please consider pressing that subscribe button.